Every kid's dreamed about running off to a fantasy world. No school, no homework, no asthma attacks during gym class, just magic, monsters, and that chance to be the hero for once in their lives. That's the spirit of adventure. But the reality, sometimes you get a magical artifact that won't shut up, and you're thrust into a tournament that is actually a proxy war for world domination. And the villains are all called chess pieces, which sounds sorta cute on paper, but it turns out that paper they were just talking about is being used to kill people and potentially enslave the entire world. So a little bit less cute in hindsight, but you know, cute on paper. And paper aside, I'm trying to introduce you to the magical world known as MÄR, or Märchen Awakens Romance. The story of Ginta, a scrawny 14-year-old kid who probably couldn't run a mile on Earth, but in MÄR heaven, he's built literally different. And that's not the only benefit he gets from coming to this new magical world. As it turns out, he's the chosen one in this fairy tale death match to decide the fate of that world. So for the time, this story was pretty crazy. And granted, this is before isekai became the buzzword for every shonen fantasy under the sun, so when this came out, it was relatively well received. But that aside, while reviewing MÄR, I could only ask myself this one question. What happens when your daydreams of escape come true, but then it comes with consequences you never imagined? Well, in Ginta's case, after he goes through the mysterious gate, he finds the answer to that question. And it's not an answer he got easily. He went through trials and tribulations, met strangers that soon became family like Dorothy. He would meet a magical item that would change the course of his life forever called Babo. And Babo himself, being the enigma that he is, still became one of Ginta's most trusted allies. And they journey throughout the land, stopping evil, helping the innocent, and doing what they can to take down the evil organization. And that all sounds fun, right? But then Ginta learns that MÄR's heaven isn't a playground, and that he was summoned to be a soldier in somebody else's war. And this kid has to deal with all this, all while trying to look for a way back home. Not to mention, while going throughout this adventure, he finds out that the main villain hits closer to home than he could have ever expected. So yeah, this isn't your typical fairy tale adventure. It's one where magical weapons argue back, tournaments double as wars, and the price for this magical adventure might be more than what he thought originally. So hey, I'm Remy, and I just want to know if anyone's checked on MÄR, and if not, let's. So first things first, MÄR's isn't just a random isekai, it's straight up shonen fantasy. Big action, big adventure, teenage boys as the target audience, and its name, short for Marchin, aka the German word for fairy tale. And with that title alone, you can kinda tell what this series is all about. It's a whimsical fantasy world where magic weapons are just as important as character growth. And this manga started in Weekly Shonen Sunday in January 2003 and ran all the way until July 2006. And during that run, it sold over 9 million copies. While not the greatest sales numbers in the world, don't let that number dissuade you from trying to look at this series. While not a part of the traditional Shonen Jump lineup, being a part of Shonen Sunday was no small feat, because Shonen Sunday had classic series like Detective Conan and Inuyasha. So MÄR was always in good company. And while being in Shonen Sunday is a feat within itself, the author himself, Nobuyuki Anzai, wasn't new to the shonen game thanks to his previous works on stories like The Flame of Recca. Think Naruto, but instead of all the other cool jutsus, it was mostly fire dragons and mystical weapons. And for people that came from my Rave Master video, think Natsu as a ninja. And with this solid foundation, fans of Anzai already knew he could pull off flashy battles with quirky powers. So when MÄR became another successful hit under his belt that finished at a total of 15 volumes, no one was honestly surprised. But what is surprising and the cool part is the publishing context. MÄR launched during the early 2000s, a time where the big three, Naruto, One Piece, and Bleach, were straight up dominating everything. But instead of copying, i.e. throw in some pirates, some ninjas, or some sword fighting ghosts, MÄR went in the opposite direction, an otherworldly fairy tale flavored adventure. And don't get me wrong, it had the staples of a good shonen series. Still action-packed fights, still had tournament arcs because you can't do shonen without a tournament arc, but its vibe was more storybook rather than grand adventure to become the next Hokage, Pirate King, or wait, actually, Ichigo was just trying to live his life and then got powers. You know what, forget, Ichigo was a pretty solid dude. My guy was just chilling and people kept showing up trying to ruin his day. And he only got stronger to protect his people. So you know what? Ichigo a solid dude. Even without a grand quest or some end goal for him as a character, he was just trying to enjoy his life. And that's pretty cool for a guy that is every race in his series. Which, I'm not even gonna have a rant about that, but regardless though. Because MÄR decided to go in a different direction, it kinda made it a counter flavor to Shonen Jump's heavy hitters at the time. And Sunday knew what they were doing. For those that don't know, Shonen Sunday has a reputation of pushing series with toy-friendly potential, and MÄR, well, if you can't imagine, fits right in. Because if you really think about it, collectible arms weren't just cool in-story artifacts and magical weapons, they also had literal merch potential, which is pretty crazy if you think about it. You read the chapter for the week, and the next thing you know, you see it in your local Family Dollar, Konbini, that's in Japan, that's not a thing in America, but you get what I'm saying? You see it in a local store, and you're like, well, I could go buy that arm. It looked pretty cool when Genta busted it out against that chess dude. And you go buy it, and the cycle continues and capitalism wins every time. And it wasn't just merch, they also had TCGs, even video games made by Konami, which hit or miss with Konami back in the early 2000s, hit or miss for sure. But regardless, that's so much potential from a franchise. And if you want even more selling potential, you gotta think about the war games. The massive tournament arcs in the series, which like I stated earlier is shonen 101, because even though they call it a game, this tournament arc would decide the fate of the world, and would double as the real gimmick of the series, a way to showcase new arms every week or every new arc through this engine. So while Naruto had jutsus, and One Piece had Devil Fruit, and Bleach had edgy sword names, MÄR had collectible fairy tale weapons, and honestly, I think that's what made it stand out a lot. So who's the mind behind MÄR? Well, that would be Nobuyuki Anzai, who was born in the Gumo Prefecture on August 19th, 1972. And like a lot of manga authors, he didn't just appear out of nowhere. He got his start being the assistant to Kazuhiro Fujita, the guy who gave us Ushi and Tora, which actually got a remake a few years ago, so if you haven't seen that, go check it out. That to say, Anzai wasn't a stranger to the game, so before he started writing his own fairy tale weapons, he was putting in work by inking demons and spears in one of Shonen's biggest horror action series. But technically, his official debut didn't come out until his first one-shot, Kintu Stringer, which snagged him an honorable mention in the Sho Gakuken Shinjin Comic T-Show. Look, I'm already knowing, I know I didn't say that right, but basically, Rookie of the Year award. And that came with a nod saying, okay, yeah, this is the guy you gotta look out for. From there, Anzai started slowly building up a resume for himself, starting with Rocket Princess in 1994, a short but punchy one-shot series about sci-fi engineering. And after that came Flame of Wreck from 1995 to 2002. And this is the series that put his name on the map. Think High School Ninja plus Fire Powers equals 33 volumes of pure shonen goodness. My guys, my peoples, my everybody's. It's so good. If you haven't read it, I highly recommend it. It's honestly the first thing I read by him. And funnily enough, I thought this was by Tagashi, the guy who made Yu Yu Hakusho and Hunter x Hunter. The vibe was the same and the art styles were similar enough that my little preteen brain thought, oh, this is what he's doing when Hunter x Hunter's on break. Clearly, he's working a whole new series. I mean, I was wrong, obviously. His back was hurting. But I genuinely thought he got bored of Hunter x Hunter or something and started doing Flame of Recca. And I was like, this is so cool. I'm glad he took a break. I wanted to go back to Hunter, but I wanted to finish this first. I was so innocent and naive and didn't know what art styles were, but I genuinely thought like, yeah, this is pretty good. I see why he's taking a break. After that would be Maximum 11 that ran from 2008 to 2011. To sum it up pretty fast, it's when love goes intergalactic and you don't know who's actually your kid. And that's the summary I'm going to give you for that. If you haven't read that one, also a fun read. And after that, Kotetsu Manraku Metal Rock from 2014 to 2017. And to be honest with you, I had never heard of this before I started researching for this video. Apparently it was his rock music phase, which is pretty cool that he had one. I had one back in high school. Maybe he heard a good Korn album or like 3 Days Grace or Fall Out Boy or something. I don't know. Just randomly had a phase. Pretty interesting though. And finally, Rei no Sekai de Arusugawa from 2018 to, well, present, which is proof he's still cranking out solid stories even decades later. But of course, as great as his other series were, his two crown jewels were obviously Flame of Recca and MÄR. While Recca gave him credibility and an anime adaptation and merchandising and a loyal fan base, MÄR gave him international reach. And that's pretty impressive, I'm just saying. And his style definitely helped that reach become international. So what defines his style? Well, for one, Anzai doesn't mess around with 400 layers of metaphors and subcontext and reading in between kind of lines. His stories are fast-paced, direct, and character-driven. He loves creative magic systems, whether it's flame-based dragons in Recca or collectible arms in MÄR. When he creates a power system, it's gonna be interesting to say the least. And as for his art style, it's sharp, energetic, with fight scenes that look like they could actually give you motion sickness if you stare long enough. Am I being a bit hyperbolic? Well, yes, obviously. I'm painting an audio/visual experience here. but also I'm trying to gas up this art style that I find very enjoyable. So let me be a bit overzealous and hype up this really great art style. But enough about all that. When it comes to Anzai, his legacy speaks to the worlds and the systems he creates. And in my opinion, that legacy is pretty solid. Commercial success, loyal fans, anime adaptations, trading cards, video games. He's carved out a space in this crowded shonen landscape. But here's the thing. None of this would have happened without good characters who can carve out that space for you. And MÄR, well, their cast, it's like a fairy tale. And let me clarify real fast. I mean like OG fairy tales, not these guys. They might get a video one day, but definitely not today. It's like a fairy tale characters came together to try to box you for the rights of world domination. And good or bad, both interesting nonetheless. They're weird, they're flawed, sometimes a bit too loud. So let's talk about some of these characters. As you know, every good fairy tale needs a hero, a rival, and a magical talking weapon. And well, MÄR has all of that and then some. We gotta start off with our main boy Ginta, who starts off as your stereotypical weed glasses wearing daydreamer. But then he lands in Mars heaven, and boom, new body, new set of muscles. The boy gets super strength in this world. Maybe it's the oxygen, or maybe he's just Superman in anime. Who knows? Regardless, he goes from scrawny to shredded like someone hit that Isekai premium package on his DLC into this new world. And that's the only video game reference you're really gonna get from Mars, because this is before the Isekai boom had happened and Isekais became flooded with video game mechanics. But overall, Ginta's your staple shonen protagonist, the underdog that rises to the occasion to become the hero that the story needs. And what the story needs him to be is the leader of Team MÄR. Also, for him to team up with a talking weapon, also known as Babo. And to be honest with you, Ginta's not holding the weapon's holding him. So let's talk about Babo. Babo is the sentient arm, who looks like a weirdly fancy kendama with a mustache. He's loud, he's arrogant, and constantly reminding Ginta who's really in charge. He calls himself a gentleman, but he's the kind of gentleman that'll cut you off on the highway if he sees an opening, regardless if he really has that space or not. Am I mad about that always? Yes, I've been on the highway before, and no, I will not forgive anyone that does that to anyone. Have I done that? Also yes. Am I a part of the problem? Also yes, but I can be mad about the problem, regardless of the fact that I'm actually the problem. Two things can be true at once. I say all this, but Babo was also one of the most down-to-earth people on the team. He's gonna keep you straight and narrow even if you don't want to be. His brash personality grounds Ginta in a way that he needs in a fantasy world. But here's the kicker about Babo. He once belonged to Phantom, one of the quote-unquote scariest dude in the series. So that means this toy hammer or mustache-wielding thing has a body count. And I'm pretty sure that little fact doesn't get mentioned on the back of toy boxes, if you haven't noticed. And does that not sound mad interesting? If that wasn't enough, there's even more to Babo than we realized at the beginning of the series. And joking aside, he cares about people. He's just really headstrong for a guy that's only a head. Then we have Dorothy, the witch, who is equally parts charming, terrifying, and a little bit unhinged. She's the first ally Ginta meets. Also the last person you want to owe money to. On paper, she's helping the heroes, but her personal mission, straight up to stop her sister Dinah from seeing the next sunrise. Which, you know, pretty metal. Also, her sister happens to be the queen of the chess pieces, so her sister's not a good person. So, like, you know, like, you don't want to root for, what do you call it when you kill your sister? Because it's not patricide or genocide. What is sister murder called? Oh, it has a name. Okay, well, that's the more you know, I guess. Learned something new today for this video. Good to know. But yeah, family dinners are probably just as awkward as a red wedding reunion. That's a Game of Thrones reference you didn't expect in this video. But back to Dorothy, she wields magic, a magic broom, a talking arm named Toto who eats a lot, and is overall the magical support slash DPS for the team. She's like if Glinda the Good Witch was an anime brawler. I'm assuming, I've never seen a red wicket, but I'm assuming it's like that. If Glinda wanted to throw hands in between hitting high notes, or, you know, something in that vein. And then we have Jack, who is the everyman of the team pretty much, and every team needs a guy that tries really, really, really hard. And well, that's Jack. A farm boy by trade slash nature with plant-based powers via his arm. Obviously, he's inspired by Jack and the Beanstalk, go figure. He's clumsy, he's underpowered, but he has the most can-do attitude out of everyone in that group, and you gotta respect him for that. And his dream, well, is to avenge his father who was killed by one of the chess pieces, which is super valid. But unfortunately though, his reality, he swings around a magical shovel and summons beanstalks like he's Poison Ivy's long-lost cousin. And while it does sound like I'm underplaying him for jokes, Jack really does put in work. He's not the strongest per se, but he's definitely the dude that'll never quit. And in shonen, if you haven't noticed by now, that matters more than raw power. Then enters Princess Snow, who looks exactly like Ginta's crush back on Earth, because, well, she literally is a part of her. The big thing for Snow is she's a split of Koyuki's soul, which is poetic in a sense, but it's also a fairy tale cliche. You know, the whole princess trapped in a tower thing, which I'm sounding down on it, but it makes sense to have this in our fairy tale related story. But the cool thing about Snow is instead of watching Disney fairy tales, she ended up watching Shrek and was more like Fiona. So she was ready to throw down with the best of them when she needed to. She's quick-witted, sharp-tongued, and strong-willed, and not afraid to speak her mind when needed. Also wielding both ice and water powers, she is a force to be reckoned with and a force that shouldn't be slept on. And now finally we have the rival character that every shonen story needs, Alvis. He's cool, he's stoic, mysterious, and a little bit brooding, and has a tattoo so big that most soccer moms worry about their daughters dating him. And besides all the glitz and glams that come with his character design, he comes with a lot of baggage. He was actually a part of the previous war games with Ginta's dad. And not only that, Phantom is obsessed with him, constantly trying to drag him to the dark side because of the zombie tattoo. So essentially, Alvis is what Ginta would be if he had more trauma, a darker past, and a cooler outfit. Up next we have Nanashi, the amnesiac leader of a group of thieves, who is a really cool character. If you've ever seen or watched the Flame of Recca series, he's actually Joker from that series, which, full disclosure, I did not know before reviewing this for this video. So I was like, oh, that's such a cool nod. Okay, we're connecting worlds with this. That's so cool. My guy's a walking Easter egg. He eventually joins Team Mar after his band of thieves kinda gets slaughtered by some chess pieces. So he joins with pretty valid intentions of justice and revenge. You can't really be mad at a guy trying to get a run back for his homies that got slid on. That's just valid. And then we have Alan, who besides the basic name is literally one of the coolest characters in this show. He fits into the wise old man mentor type role, but like he fits in that role very well. He's a bridge between generations, from the old guard with Ginta's dad to the new guard with Ginta, carrying scars of wisdom that define him both as a warrior and a mentor. But Alan's story isn't just one of triumph, don't get me wrong. He did have a bit of a hiccup when he lost against Halloween, his childhood friend turned evil, which ended up with him being stuck inside of a dog named Edward, which is kind of weird, granted, but all things considered, against your rival childhood friend who betrayed you, it could be worse. You know, you could be dead or something. You're just a dog werewolf man thing. So it could be worse. And there you go. Those are all of our main characters for Mar. And with that out of the way, let's finally get into the plot. So picture this. You're weak. When you lose your glasses, you're practically Velma, and you're a middle schooler who can't even dodge a dodgeball. So pretty rough start for a character, but that's what Ginta is. He is a average, well, below average, regular kid in Japan. But one day in the middle of class, after being kind of harassed by your bully, a magical portal opens up and you and your childhood friend decide to walk through it, but it can only accept one person. So you take that leap of faith into a magical new world. And suddenly when you're in this new world, you're stronger, faster, fearless, and you have average eyesight. So as someone who has to wear glasses on the daily, I'll take that bonus. That's a great power up, honestly. Give me 20/20, please. And that's basically Ginta's intro to the series. So after arriving in Mars Heaven, he becomes enamored with these things called arms, magical artifacts that help the wielders do combat. And his arms is Babo, the living arm, one of a kind, a talking weapon, with an ego bigger than the plot itself. And at the beginning, Babo is as powerful as he is insufferable. And on paper, the idea of a scrawny new hero being stuck with a trash-talking toy hammer thing is actually rather enjoyable, so hijinks ensue, but before long, Ginta meets Jack, his new right-hand man in this world. The farmer boy with the magical shovel that learns about the looming threat that is the chess pieces. And if you couldn't guess, these guys aren't here to play games. Look, okay, I had to make at least one chess board game joke in this video. If I didn't, I would be doing myself a disservice. Was it bad? Yes. Do I also like it? Also yes. Once again, two things can be true at once. Anyway, once again, Jack learns that these guys aren't here to play games. Their goal is world domination. And the way they plan to go about that is through proxy wars called war games. And with that, we enter into the main arc, the War Game arc, which is a massive bloody tournament that decides the fate of Mar Heaven. So Ginta and the gang band together to form Team Mar, and hopefully win all the war games to keep peace in the world. It's basically March Madness, except for basketball, it's life or death magical combat, which, not gonna lie, as exciting as March Madness was, if we had magical combat at March Madness, that would be crazy. I would actually like my college instead of hating them from taking all my money and giving me a piece of paper after a couple years. You know, maybe I would like them. I don't, but maybe I would if we had magical combat. Each battle during the war game works as a spotlight for a character's growth. For example, you have Jack, the cowardly farm kid, finds out he can grow a backbone when fighting the chess piece that killed his dad. I mean, go figure, if I found out the person that slit up my pops and ended him, I feel like my spine wouldn't be the problem, it would be that he could see his after I ripped it out of his back for what he did. That would be the real issue. Yeah, ooh, that's violent. I'm gonna keep that in, whatever. And on the other hand, Dorothy gets to vent her rage against the people who work for her sister. And you know, that's pretty cool. And Ginta finally gets to run the ones with Phantom, the zombie knight, because he's a zombie sorta, who was going for the high score with Babo when it came to collecting body counts. And after clashes, revelations, truth bombs, cathartic moments, eventually the war games conclude, and the good guys sorta kind of win. Except they don't, but they think they do for a second there, because guess what? The war games don't actually win the war. Because surprise, why did I say it like that? Because surprise, the true final enemy was hiding in plain sight. The last arc shifts to a castle raid, where the ugly truth of everything working in behind the scenes come out, where it turns out Ginta's long-lost dad, was alive, apparently. So we love to see it. Ginta's dad is canonically not a bum. He was possessed. He would have gone home if he could. Put him on the list of good anime dads that didn't just abandon their kids for the love of the game. Put him on the board. Yeah, right there, right next to Minato. He earned that. Right next to Maze also. They're just good parents right there. We love to see a good anime dad. It's so rare. But yeah, it turns out he's possessed by Chaldea's orb, another sentient arm, who has been puppeteering this entire nightmare situation for everybody. So now Ginta has to do the impossible and fight his own father. Not to kill him, but to free him. Meanwhile, Dorothy faces her ultimate test. She fights her sister Dinah. Not to kill- wait, no, she wants to smoke. Never mind, she wants to smoke there. Oh, she wants to smoke there. And after running the ones, she managed to put her sister down. It's a brutal, bittersweet payoff for her entire revenge-driven arc. And after this point, we reach the climax. And the climax, they go ballistic. Ginta unleashes all of his guardian arms, does the whole gargoyle thing, and eventually, they finally beat Chaldea's orb. And on a brighter note, this victory doesn't just save Mars Heaven, it revives all the fallen warriors who gave their lives during the war games. Which is very convenient, not gonna lie, but what's a fairy tale without a fairy tale ending, right? And finally, peace is restored, but not just for Ginta. His dad gets to go home with him. Snow fuses with Kyuki, become one whole singular being. I guess they did the fusion dance somewhere in between, and that happened. And everybody's happy at the end of the series. And even on a positive note, Ginta keeps his isekai power-ups in the real world. Well, I guess the alternate world. So, you know, he won the lottery for this. The weak kid is gone, and the only thing that's left is the hero. And this happily ever after sticks, if we don't count the spinoff, which we'll get to later. And that's it. That's the story of MÄR. Obviously, I'm paraphrasing a lot and keeping a lot of it ambiguous in case you want to go out and read it yourself. You have enough context cut out from my description to read it and have a different interpretation from it. Okay, well, maybe not that different. But overall, it still should feel relatively fresh. You might know a couple things, but I doubt you'll take everything I say to heart and retain it by the end of tomorrow. So, if you do go out there and read MÄR, please enjoy it. I hope you do. It's a great series. It's not the most deep. I'm not going to pretend like it's Monster or Psycho-Pass or anything like that. But for what it is, it's a good time. It's very fun. It's charismatic in its own whimsical way. The power system's interesting. Overall, I would recommend this series. It's not a must-read by any means, but it's a fun read. So if you find yourself with nothing to do on a Wednesday, or maybe it's a holiday, or maybe you're on a road trip to somewhere you don't care about, pick up MÄR. Treat yourself to a little reading time while you're doing nothing. But okay, let's talk about the anime now. Well, if you're from the States, you probably only know MÄR from the anime. And when you think of it, you probably think of one of those endless 2000s animes that have way too much filler and horrible pacing. Looking at One Piece. Oh, looking at early One Piece. Oh. And if you thought that, you'd be right. The MÄR's anime ran for officially 102 episodes, between April 2005 and March 2007. It followed the manga mostly. And by mostly, I mean it followed it to a point and then went full shonen detour filler content mode with stretched out battles, extra fights in the war game that made it feel like it was trying to tell its audience, yo, what if this tournament arc lasted forever? And don't get me wrong, what shonen head doesn't love a good tournament arc? But man, sometimes it feels like you can only stretch a tournament arc so long before it gets kind of not fun. But after a while, thankfully, they stopped stretching it, and this series actually got a definitive ending. Granted, it was an original ending, so that may not be to your liking, but it is an ending, so we take those, I guess. But that wasn't the only sort of controversial thing about this anime. Granted, in Japan, it aired like a normal TV Tokyo anime series. In the US, though, a little bit chaotic, because of course it was. Viz Media picked up the series and threw the first couple episodes onto Toonami Jetstream, which I know nobody remembers what that is, cause like, what? Man, 2006 was weird. Then, when Toonami was done with that side quest, they threw it on Toonami proper. Unfortunately, though, the episodes were out of order. And not only that, the dub also cuts off on episode 52, and then it just disappears. So, if you were a young kid trying to follow the plot back then, you probably thought you were doing something wrong. But it wasn't you, it was his executives at the network being weird. And maybe there was more to it behind the scenes, but obviously I wasn't in the room when these decisions were made, so I can only infer from what I can research. And it just seems like they just kind of said, here you go, maybe this will work out in the end. And that's what they did. And we got whatever we got when it came to the MÄR anime on Toonami back in the day. But yeah, while the anime may not be perfect, it's peak 2000s energy. Bright colors, long arcs, and filler content you either hate or secretly love but you can't tell anybody. And a final that does wrap things up, even if it is an anime original ending. And okay, I did promise to talk about the spin-off manga, which I'm sure a lot of people didn't know about, called MÄR Omega, which ran from 2006 to 2007. And that right there should tell you a lot about the series. MÄR Omega acted as a direct continuation of the manga, written by Anzai but illustrated by his assistant this time. It's been 6 years after the original story with a new protagonist named Kai, who's just a regular kid, but now the story's a bit different because arms are everywhere, technically. Except that this time, the arms are fake arms, technically. The problem is with the fake arms, they literally draw out the life energy of its users. So it's up to Kai and his new group of friends to stop the fake arms, to save the village that disappeared, and to stop the new big bad of the series. And to be completely honest with you, nobody really cared about this. And I hate to say this, after I read it for this video, I get why. Because honestly, it feels like they just wanted to do Mars again without Ginta, which is a creative choice for sure. But during the read, all I could think of was, man, this literally could have just been Ginta. He could have just brought Ginta back and the story would probably be better. Instead, we got Kai, and Kai's not a bad character. He's just a little bit less interesting. And not to mention, we get a bunch of cameos from the OG Team Mars members, and like, this is cool, but I feel like, man, this really should have just been Ginta meeting his friends again. This should have been like Mars Shippuden or something, I don't know. Like, it's not bad, it's just, I understand why it's not popular. But that's only my opinion. You might like it. If you read it yourself, you might find enjoyment in this spin-off series, and by all means, I hope you do. It just wasn't for me personally. But if you did want more Mars content, and reading isn't your cup of tea, maybe you could enjoy the video games, is what I would say if we lived in Japan, but unfortunately, we didn't get any of those video games over here in the States. But in Japan, Konami published several Japanese exclusive video games for Mars, mostly handheld games, but regardless, a bunch of games. You had Mars Heaven Knocking on Heaven's Door, Mars Heaven Arm Fight Dreams, Mars Heaven The Devil of Chaldea, and Mars Heaven Oblivion of Clavier. But if spin-off video games weren't enough, Mars also got a TCG. And that TCG does not look that interesting, I'm not gonna lie to you. I don't know how to play it, but it didn't look that interesting from gameplay videos that I've seen. But the card art does look very nice though. I can always appreciate card art, even if I don't play the game. Looking at you, Yu-Gi-Oh! I do not play you anymore, but your card art looks very nice, and I wish Yu-Gi-Oh! Did full art cards, but I guess they're too cool for that. And yeah, that's about it. While I did leave out some things, overall, MÄR didn't change the industry. It didn't spawn in imitators, and it didn't become a billion-dollar franchise like its competitors at the time. And because of that, some people might call it forgettable. But then you realize Mars lasted longer than several more famous shows. It was also one of the first kids anime ever streamed in the US. It proved that even quote-unquote mid-tier manga could punch above their weight in multimedia adaptations. And for the fans who were there, Mars isn't forgotten. It's a time capsule of the early 2000s anime culture. And honestly, is that not super cool? And at the end of the day, Mars is a series built on the dream of adventure. From its innocence to its darkest moment, this series is always about the spirit of adventure. From its good and bad, from its ugly and pretty, that's what this story is about. This series wants you to revel in adventure, in the fantasy, in the beauty of the journey, and everything that entails. And sure, the journey might not be what you always imagine. The battles could be goofy, the anime sometimes felt like it was stuck in filler quicksand, and the TCG It was no Yu-Gi-Oh, that's for sure. But that undoubtedly is its charm. It's messy, it's wild, and it's memorable. Because while MÄR didn't conquer the manga world like One Piece, Naruto, or Bleach, it carved out its own little kingdom. It gave us a cast of weirdly lovable, crazy characters that dug into our imaginations and showed us a good time in weird situations. And while not the best thing ever, it even had a sequel series that kept pushing that story forward. For that alone, I still appreciate it even if I didn't like it the best. And maybe that's the real spirit of an adventure. It's not about becoming the biggest or the most legendary, it's about setting off on this new adventure of unknown, having that bravery to take the first step. And in that way, I resonate with this series because, well, that was YouTube for me. That first step was me making that initial YouTube video all those months ago, because we're almost at a year, guys, crazy. But all those months ago, making that initial YouTube video, just kind of complaining about my current lot in life, was my first step. And me taking that first step on this new adventure of trying to do YouTube was great for me. I enjoyed this. I like doing this. And that's my adventure. I feel like anyone who's taking a first step in something new or something different than what they currently do on their everyday can resonate a little bit with this story. Not on every level, mind you, but enough to where you think, you know what? This actually wasn't that bad. So, hey, I'm Remy. If I may have sparked that spirit of adventure in you through this video, like and subscribe and all the other fun stuff. Thank you for letting me check up on MÄR, and I will see you in the next video. Like and subscribe once again, and y'all be easy. Later. Okay, end of the video. And I gotta say, this was okay. MÄR is definitely an okay series. It's not a 10 out of 10 for sure, but it is something I wouldn't mind recommending to somebody who's just started anime. Like, if you haven't read or watched a lot of stuff, I would definitely recommend this as a starter pack. Like, you get them into Demon Slayer, you get them into this, and you get them into like the Fairytale or something, and you know, they build a solid foundation, they figure out what they like and what they don't like. This is definitely one of those. It's not amazing, but it's definitely like a starter pack anime in my opinion. But yeah, that's it. I enjoyed it. Genuinely, I did. It may not sound like I had the most fun rewatching this or rereading some stuff. Omega is pretty bad, but it's not like the worst, but it's not great. it's not great. But once again, it's not the worst thing in the world. So yeah, but that's it, guys. Thanks for watching all that fun stuff. If you made it to this end of the video, I'm so thankful that you did. I will see you in the next video. Y'all be easy. Hopefully we hit 5K subs soon. All right, bye.